you know, the world is moving so quickly now that it's good not only to be informed, but really learn from the people who are in it on a day-to-day basis. What are the things that they're working on? What are their kind of learnings? Where do they see, you know, these different markets and things moving into? So today we're here with Robert and Oscar, who are going to introduce themselves very shortly. But again, thank you for coming, and the space is being provided to us by Quotidian Ventures, and the meetup is organized by Swarm, where we make apps for mobile, wearable, and emerging tech. So if you guys don't mind, we're going to start with Robert and then go to Oscar. Maybe you could just give us a little bit of background about yourselves, you know, what you do and what you do in connected devices and IoT.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Robert Cervelione. I'm a registered architect here in New York. So what I do is, beyond just traditional architecture, is we do a lot of smart home integration inside you know, high-end apartments, houses, and things like that. I'm a professor at Pratt as well as UPenn and CUNY. I guess that's a lot of teaching, but and I do a lot of research in technology and how it can help the building, both on the smart home side, on the fabrication side. So I work with a lot of tech, and we do a lot of IoT stuff, looking at how the whole integration goes together. Especially now, there's a ton of DIY stuff emerging, and then for years there was a ton of like really commercial-driven home automation and automation systems, and so we're kind of looking at how we can make them smarter and better.
Cool. And I'm Oscar Torres. I started off in the advertising world as a creative director at Gray, New York. So I did a lot of work for Captain Morgan, Tanqueray, Pringles, and then after grad school, I decided to go into the whole entrepreneurship realm. So joined a bunch of I found out about these things called hackathons, and through that, it was a lead to like this whole Internet of Things world. And so now I work at Keen Home as the creative director after having founded a couple of other companies. And there, as a creative director, I'm doing a lot of the UX, also a lot of the product management, and user interactions, as well as just growing the brand. A lot of startups don't have brands, and that's one of the emphases. One of the emphasis for, or a goal of mine to really, you know, bring out that brand.
So what is Keen Home?
What is Keen Home? Keen Home is, we are a company that is making proactive devices for the home, so that the home can take care of you as opposed to the opposite, which is you trying to take care of your home.
And in English?
We make smart devices for the home.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Excellent. Next question is, what are you currently working on that you are most excited about?
Okay. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, but one of the things I'm helping with is one of the universities. We're doing a competition for a completely off-the-grid house. We're actually building it here in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Just went on a truck today, doing a trip down to California, and the whole house is all about how can you create a fully sustainable house. And so I helped out a lot with the sort of smart home integration. I'm very excited about that. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the smart home world, and so there's all of these different companies and devices, and they have yet to unify on standards. We have Zigbee, we have Z-Wave, we have Lutron makes proprietaries, and I can go down all the list. They're making all of these proprietary things. So one of the things we're looking at is how can we make them talk a lot better, and then go just beyond the typical device. So one of the great things we're doing is like looking at the entire energy consumption of the house, and not just having like individual pieces talk to each other, but having everything else talk to each other. So for instance, like the solar, if your refrigerator has a great seal on it, and if you didn't open it for an hour and the compressor was off, it would still function completely fine. So finding like things in the house. How can we pull energy? So like, you know, if there was a spike in the AC system, can we pull it from the refrigerator to sort of balance out the loads? And these things sound very simple and straightforward, but there's no sort of back end that helps us do that. So it was really great. We're working on making a lot of like back end database stuff that was able to push a ton of data up to it and being able to read it and kind of reconnect it back into the house we have about 4 different systems, all, you know, that are separate that we're trying to connect together because the HVAC system is very advanced and it has a very proprietary system, and so we had to like find neat ways to get them to all work together through the electrical system. So I'd say that's probably my favorite project right now.
Yeah, I guess what's I'm most excited about at the moment, working at Heat Home and the Internet of Things, is how to distill what's happening, especially with our products, which are boring, quote unquote boring vents. Like if you look at HVAC systems, all you see is vents. And how can you make something that unappealing, sexy, and attractive to the everyday homeowner? So it's really, and then more than that is how to explain that this new technology is going to help your home, but it's actually not going to be complex to do. When you think of smart devices, you think of the iPhone, which has 1 million features, and people don't want to, you know, educate themselves and go through the trouble of figuring out how to work something. So kind of conveying that, by the way, this thing that you're buying can actually be a simple thing that doesn't require a headache to make it work. And by the way, it works with all the other devices that you have. That is a big challenge, especially when, as you were saying, there's a lot of technological problems that are happening, mainly protocol communication, cloud-to-cloud integrations. And right now, the most cutting-edge tech companies, like even Nest and all these other guys, they are having trouble integrating their cloud-to-cloud system. So it is a very hard problem. But with that said, when I think the magic of having it work in the most simple way is the reward, because if somebody can just open the box for the vent, put it at like wherever their old vent used to be, and then all of a sudden they can control it with their cell phone without a headache, and then it talk to other smart devices like a light bulb or the Nest thermostat. I mean, that is an amazing experience. And then when you see at the end of the day like this energy savings or just efficiency that happens because of that, I mean that's what's exciting, to see the future of where we're going.
So, in your last sentence, you touched on the future, and we're here now, and it's kind of just the emergence of this. We're kind of taking our baby steps into the Internet of Things. Even though there are connected like sharks out there that like you can track online. Have you seen this? Yeah, it's pretty cool. Sorry, kind of tangent. I just was thinking about sharks earlier. So we are kind of in this emergence, and we're taking these baby steps into the Internet of Things, into these connected devices, the connected home. And you have things like the Nest, which I guess I would say are probably the most, some of the, if not the most popular ones that we're accustomed to seeing. But where do you see this industry in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, and what kind of changes do you see happening in that time frame?
Should I start?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very good question. I think a lot about where we're headed, and I believe that products are going to become more and more dumbed down. Like, so this big mysterious world of how things work eventually are going to become sort of second nature. Like, you don't need to know the details about how cloud-to-cloud integration works. You just need to know that, oh, if I turn on my Bluetooth and I tap on this button, like, things are going to work. So it's going to be the equivalent of that, but with new devices. It's like, maybe touch your devices together, or like, point with your phone, or something along those lines that makes it simple for things to connect. And I think I see the future as one, working together, like devices working together, protocols that actually match, so that people, once you know how to use one device, like you know how to use all of them, or more importantly, they all just do their thing, and you don't have to think about it. Like if you set your thermostat or you want this room warmer, everything just happens. I mean, you don't have to like adjust manual things or levers, and I think that's going to be like the exciting part. What's really bad about the future, I think, is going to be like information overload, the opposite, which is we're going to have tons of data, like in terms of the business side, just like information overload and not knowing what to do with all this archive of data that we all of a sudden have. So big data is going to become important, but I don't think it's going to become important enough to. I mean, so we can talk about big data another time, but big data is going to become a big problem in the future.
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely touch on big data a little bit more, especially in the building industry. There's so many buildings that are just streaming massive amounts of data, and people aren't mining them as well as they should. But for me, I think what I really need to see to happen in the next couple of years is better integration of devices and transparency. Like you were saying, like you shouldn't, well, it's good that you can control it with your phone. I think that it should go one level further, and that automate a lot of the sort of talking integration, with itself. So for things like, even like vents and stuff like that, like you're talking about, like, so like if the user like closes down all the vents, you would want it to tell the Nest that maybe the AC system shouldn't actually be on or something like that. And then that should, tell something else to do what it needs to do and stuff like that. And so it's that sort of ecosystem that I think that needs to be created.
And it's really interesting that you bring up security, because right now, for example, if I log into one of your Nest accounts, I can see your house, I can see everything. So security has become like a huge problem. And these smart devices, right? It's a smartphone. It should know that, by the way, this phone doesn't belong to like any of your friends. So maybe you should do something about it, right? So that security has become another issue that I think we need to tackle in the coming years, and I think that's going to get stronger and stronger. Privacy, I feel like this is more like what I would like to see, that privacy really gets defended, because right now, the direction that we're headed, security is kind of like a second thought. It doesn't matter what company you're talking about, whether it's a Google company or any other company. They might say that they're the most secure system, but in reality, security is really poor, just because of our infrastructure that all these devices are built on. And I feel like that's a big point that we're going to be addressing as we go into the future.
So who owns this data, and how easy is it for government to access it? Because we are talking about security, and data is being collected not just through smart things, but it's collected through the to the computers in your pocket, to phones, through wearables, everything. So this is a concern, and where is that line drawn?
I like to think of data as, or this question, every time somebody mentions this, I like to think about the coffee shop scenario, where if you're in a coffee shop and everybody's chatting away about their personal lives, about business, about anything, you're not per se breaking the law by overhearing a conversation, but you are breaking the law if you like record the conversation and then use it to your advantage, like I don't know, then there's like a copyright violation that's happening. So in that scenario, it's kind of similar to what's happening today in the mass communication system. So there's a lot of noise going around where you can hear phone calls, you can see what's happening, sniff like internet communication, email, whatever. But it doesn't, I guess you are breaking the law if you read somebody's email. It's kind of like opening an envelope going to a home. But when the government does it, and or private companies, then record it, and then they analyze it, and then come up with some cognitive intelligence based on all that information, that I think is where the line should be drawn. Let the noise happen, but as soon as you record it and analyze it, that's a whole separate scenario, and that's where I think. And right now there are no real laws around this phenomenon. There are laws that relate to copyright and communication, but nothing around what happens to my data. Especially one of the weirdest and darkest parts is like what happens to my data on Facebook after somebody passes away, or what happens to the data after, like if I delete my account, it remains on an archived server somewhere. So, and it's actually impossible for these companies to go in and delete all your data. It's super hard because it's actually archived in this cloud system. So it is becoming a problem, and I'm not sure if I know the solution.
For me, if the government wants to look at your data or even your cell phone, they will. So I don't think there's any way to stop them. Should they? I know it's a whole other debate. Can they? Yeah. For me, where I think the issue happens is, security used to be like have a good password for your email. Great. Now have a good password for your phone that's now unlocking your door. Hooked up to a Wi-Fi network where you have a really terrible sort of password to that, which then lets them into the thing that's controlling your door and your lights and your cameras and everything else inside of your house. So for me, that's where the data sort of breach needs to happen, is because most people, while the security protocols are out there, have no idea about them and are super scared. I have such a hard time convincing people to even put smart locks on their door because they think, well, what happens like if I lose my phone? And I was like, well, it's swipe locked, right, or password protected, or like no. And so I'm like, yes, you should maybe think of not have we have to talk about how does this like work into your life?
1, 1, 1, 1.
Yeah. So it's like all of a sudden now your phone unlocked everything, including your door.
Yeah. And I mean, would you say that is the biggest risk with the connected home?
It is, because once you're in there, now you literally have control, and then once we make it smarter, integrate it more and more and more, you literally have control of their entire house.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody feels safe behind the door, but now if literally somebody in their car, can jack into your Wi-Fi and control this, then yeah, we definitely have to. I'd say when I work with clients integrating their house, that's their number one concern.
Interesting. Going to a little bit of a happier place. We touched on this earlier, that if your fridge, right, it goes and it's running, and you can actually power it down, and it winds up staying cool. We're talking a lot about sustainability, and the Nest has proven out that you do, in fact, you can save money, you can save energy, using IoT, Internet of Things, and you can definitely do it using connected devices in the smart home. How do you see this making an impact, both in terms of sustainability and energy use? And the other question to kind of piggyback on top of that is, how is smart home penetration happening here in the States now? Because while Google did buy Nest, and obviously there's a market need, how quickly is that accelerating? And is my mom going to have a Nest? You don't need to answer that one.
Yeah. So there's your latter question. The strategy for Nest is to penetrate, the market where your mom, that's her market. They're trying to make it appealing for somebody who's like a technophobe or somebody who doesn't care for technology to see this thing and it be good looking enough and sexy enough that they just want to have it. And they don't know what it does and the full capabilities of it, but they're like, it's the new thing that's going to make my home better and it's going to save me money. And as for sustainability, for sustainability's argument, that's a good thing because you're making the home more efficient. That's what the vents are also trying to do, the Keen Home Smart Vents. Right now you control the whole house with one thermostat, maybe you have two thermostats, But let's say you never use the guest room and you have a bedroom that is like half of the time is not being occupied, and nobody goes to the basement anymore. And so why should those places be conditioned? You know, why are you wasting energy, like, you know, putting air conditioning down there? So these new devices now can shut off, you know, those sections and say, okay, this part of the house is not needed. Redirect all the air to the sections that are being used, and then all of a sudden you see a savings of, you know, 50%, 20% on your energy bill, based on how you interact with all the rooms in your home. And so it's an interesting new phenomenon in sustainability. As far as overall sustainability, that's a different,
yeah.
a different.
Yeah, I mean, sustainability is now the new buzzword, and you know the whole home automation thing is kind of funny because for years, like any building built in the last 10 years, especially like in New York, if it was a commercial building, I mean, it would be crazy if it didn't have centralized automation in it. Every modern building for the last 10 years has had this. Insanely robust systems that are, you know, fault tolerant and everything like that. The problem is that these very advanced systems that we're only using in commercial buildings that are really, really good and robust are insanely expensive too. So they only made it into commercial buildings. What we're seeing now is like the penetration into the DIY home market and things like that, where it's like now you can buy a kit and, you know, try and make, you know, your home just as smart as, you know, we're making commercial buildings. And I'm really happy to see it make it into the residential side of things because there's a lot of energy lost in there. And, you know, things like Nest definitely, you know, save you a lot of money. In fact, they ended the program this year, but for the last 3 years, Con Ed would give you a free one. You could just have to fill out a piece of paper and they'd send you a Nest for free. All you had to do was, like, you know, show them that, you know, you were a customer, and that was simply it. And if you ever installed any boiler in your house or something like that, they would also send you a brand new Nest. And it's unfortunate they stopped the program, but it was great. So I would convince everybody, like, whenever we were upgrading their house, like, you know, just fill out this form. But they are still, you know, giving you tax credits and stuff like that now, which is really good that everybody needs to start to take advantage of. But, you know, these products are becoming a lot more easy to use. So, like, smart vents and stuff like that. And I think one of the biggest problems for penetration on my side is there's a lot of really great stuff out there, and then, you know, it's good for like retrofit. In my industry, unfortunately, it's still very, very slow to change. It is compared to a tech industry, it's like a snail. You know, so for me, it's about getting the people who are, you know, doing like larger projects to try and incorporate these things at the design side and not, like, you know, give over these places to, you know, the owners and then all of a sudden have to go, you know, now retrofit their house that they just, you know, spent, you know, $500,000 updating with smart home stuff because, you know, everybody got run-of-the-mill stuff. And, you know, so for me, that's where I think, like, we really, you know, need to kind of penetrate things. Is like, you know, do it early on, and it'll be that much more integrated.
So, you know, we've been talking about the connected home, right? But, you know, what about the Internet of Things as a whole? You know, because, you know, this is just a subset of kind of the larger umbrella term. And, you know, this also is a two-part question. The first one is going to be, what one factor do you think would accelerate the most the benefit of the Internet of Things? And does everybody know what the Internet of Things is? Okay, cool.
Why don't you say it anyway?
It's literally anything that's connected to the internet. Anything that's connected to the internet that collects data in some shape or form. So it could be, you know, it could be this Apple Watch, it could be, you know, a phone, it could be Keen Home Smart Vent, it could be a Nest, or it could be the aforementioned shark that's collecting data where it's swimming around in the ocean.
Do you guys? There was a great site. It was around for a long time. I don't think it's still around. It's called Patchu. And back when everybody was like really, super into Arduinos and little microcontrollers and stuff like that, it was this great little platform where any data you were collecting, you could just jack it into Patchu and stream it. And so there were, architects, surprisingly, really loved it. And so they had all these little weather stations and things like all of these hot points. They were checking air quality and all of that. And they were streaming all of this data into Patchu, and you can just grab the feed. And so we're doing some really great stuff with it, where all of these people would have these little sensors. In fact, there was even like a little cell phone app that would let you, just stream whatever sensor your phone had, like light data or whatever, into it. You'd be able to get these really great visualizations at the city level, and I think that's where the Internet of Things needs to really penetrate. So just like in your home, you can start to look at how does, your electricity and your, HVAC and all of that work. But if you were pumping all that data back out, can we look at it at the city or the block level? Can we then mitigate, load balance, not your house, but the entire city block on energy usage? And then at the city level, and then at the state level, can we feed all of this data in and then literally make smart cities, not smart homes?
Yeah.
That'd be pretty rad.
Yeah, from my end, things that need to change. Well, there's culture, obviously, we need to sort of change as a culture to take in this new paradigm of the thing that we're using, the tools that we're using. There's also technology needs to change a little bit. So that is a big one, and I can talk a little bit more about technology. And lastly, I think incentives or value propositions. So we're talking about Con Ed, but what if all of a sudden an insurance company was giving you a benefit because you have, kind of like when you buy a car and if it has an airbag, you get a discount on or premium charges. Same thing with the home. What if you had all these different things in the home? Smart smoke detector. You have the vents, so if the detector detected smoke, the vents close. And so these devices are talking to each other that all of a sudden make your home a little more safe. One, that's great for you because, families, our families live in homes and we love our families. We want them to be safe, so why wouldn't
Some people love their families more than others. Let's be honest about that.
Very true. So why wouldn't you want to have these devices? Two, you're getting an incentive for having them. So policy actually could change so that increases the consumption of these. So culture, a lot of people get alienated by their devices. They get them and then they don't know what to do with them. I actually bought, I'm a technologist. I have had these smart devices that I bought and just put them away because they're too complex to use. And I'm a technologist. So it's the interactions, the user experience, that's all very important for cultural adoption. Mm-hmm. And then the technology itself, things like you just mentioned Arduino. 2007, the Arduino came out and it was a prototype, and these guys from Italy and MIT, NYU, they were doing all these things with the Arduinos, and then in a short 2-3 years, all of a sudden you have the MakerBot. You have this whole brand new industry that came out because of this tiny little innovation of it came with a little library for software, and it allowed you to connect it to processing, which is software visualization. So these sort of new tools bring about change, and I think we need more of those. We need more policy. We need more of all that to see the change.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we've just got a few questions left, and then we're going to open it up to you guys for your questions, which are probably going to be much more inspiring than this rubbish. So what shouldn't be connected and why?
I couldn't see a reason not to connect anything as long as it's done well. Again, there's always, of course, security protocols, but there's no reason. There might be a reason, but barring safety concerns and stuff like that, you can only benefit for having things be smarter and integrated and talk to each other. So unless there's a glaring security concern of something, I think everything should sort of be integrated. I mean, I think there's more positives than there are negatives to the integration.
Robert, I have one word for you: Skynet.
Skynet. It's great. We just got to make a better Skynet.
Yeah,
Try not to have it kill us, and we'll be fine.
No, have you read that? It'll put us into zoos.
Yeah.
There's an article recently. They wound up having an AI machine that would learn from human language, and then it asked, "What would you do with humanity?" It's like, "I would put it in the zoo." So Skynet too.
So that is one that I think I personally wouldn't do too much with. I mean, I would do enough to make it more efficient, like weapons. But weapons in general, I would try to keep Internet of Things away from that. Especially when it comes to artificial intelligence, we do not like. I mean, that's a big thing that has been controversial, and now a lot of people have signed, letters to the government to prevent our army becoming automated and autonomous and have the ability to kill people with their own, judgment. So I don't want that. Skynet.
Yeah. Very good points. Cool. So, we have a couple of platforms that help, manage the data and manage all these things. And it's kind of, there's Smart Things, there's Everything, there's HomeKit, there's Google's Brillo. Which one? Why? Benefits, drawbacks, your favorite, the one you detest the most, what do you have a personal vendetta against? Rock or world?
Yeah, I think they're all the same, honestly. Like, not in terms of, some are less painful than others. But at the end of the day, the idea would be not for us, the company, to choose the data repository.
But the data repository to choose you. No, I'm sorry.
That's what they would do in Soviet Russia, yes.
Sorry.
It would be really cool if we, the consumer, got to choose where that data could be stored. So like maybe there was like the Oscar bucket of bits up in the cloud somewhere. And that would be interesting if it's like, okay, all my data goes into that bucket over there because that belongs to me. And that would be cool because then it would be, you would be correlating data sets more, easier. So all the companies, Google, through Facebook, through whoever has Internet of Things devices, they don't have to worry about this whole database structure. They're like, oh, there's Oscar stuff. We just throw it in there. You don't need to build the backend. Just there it is.
Yeah, it's true. I actually have no preference to either one either. I mean, it's again, just about getting them all to be correct. And owning your own data is great.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good idea. And just like everybody's ubiquitous cloud storage, there needs to be a better cloud database that everybody can feed into. I think that's for sure. Because that's one of the first things you have to do when you have this stuff and you want to integrate it all together. You have to build your own database backend, which when you think about it, it's like, well, there should be something that exists that makes that just as easy as Google Drive.
Yeah, but the problem with the whole database fragmentation is that my Nest has a different database from my Events that has a different database from and then to join it all together through APIs. That's what the main problem is right now. How do you
have
start
to make a custom
sorting
database to grab all of the database and make
it's
it
just so redundant.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the next level of a database. It's just somebody's going to come up with a product where it's like, okay, any device that you want, just this is your database, your information bucket, and just to connect everything to that.
Something much more elastic than our current database structure.
Yeah.
You guys should pitch that to YC. Cool. So last question. Any sites, people, articles, or books that have inspired you lately?
For me, actually, I thought about this one, Cradle to Cradle. So it's a book. It's now that I read. Once you know a lot more about Internet of Things and technology, cradle to cradle. It's like a little light, but they make a good point with this little reference to this device called a spine. So a spine is essentially a barcode, but it's like a digital marker, and it essentially starts tracking any product from when it was born or when it was conceived as a blueprint, as a idea, up until it lands to your hands, up until like where it actually ends up. So like then you can actually do a full life cycle analysis of a product. And I think that to me is like a very interesting idea. So that book actually really inspired me when it came to technology, innovation, sustainability. So it kind of has it all, and I think that's one of the books that brings it all together. But yeah, also Snow Crash. Who doesn't like Snow Crash? Snow Crash is just a book about this hacker that wants to, it's pretty quirky, but it's.
So what's he want to do?
In the future, developers are so like it's kind of like everybody becomes a developer, so you actually can make more money delivering pizza than developing. So that's the context for them.
I can't wait for that day to happen and how it's going to impact my bottom line.
It's sort of happening, you know. I mean, I think that's right. You give somebody the Arduino, and then they developed, that. Previously they would not have the microprocessor key skills or even coding skills to even tackle something like that. So, but then it becomes this interesting thing. It's like, instead of you making tools, you make tools for the tool maker. And I think that's where a lot of it's shifting. So like, better APIs that, like API is becoming a normal word, like people outside of tech might know what an API or an SDK is. And so then your job as tech is making better APIs and SDKs so that people can develop better things.
That's a very good point. Well, cool. Thank you. This wraps up the boring portion of the evening, and we're going to open the floor up to you guys. Any questions? Yes.
How do you propose to make the Internet of Things less sexy? Because the way I see it now is the light bulb, literally the light bulb portion of technology is where we have invented the light bulb and every home needs to have one. And now, looking forward, I think we're to the phase of, okay, how do you move forward from that? So how do you get to the point where we're not shilling internet-connected light bulbs, but we're really saying this all already works, it all already happens, it all does everything it needs to do for you. It doesn't take a custom database to make it work. How do you get there?
For me, it's something I'm really trying to get to. I mean, I think that's where we need to get. It's no longer a thing, it's just the norm. But it starts also in the integration of things. Like if we're talking, for me, like, being an architect, there's a lot of internet connected things, but the smart home, the home is the big thing. And so for me, I think our industry is failing everybody because they are providing you with an old thing that you then have to go and retrofit, literally after you've just, received the key to it. It's like, here's your shiny brand new house, and now go look up everybody's products to make it high-tech, smart, and energy efficient. So I think it needs to, for me, those kinds of things need to happen at the sort of conception. So one, it's education. Everybody needs to know what a smart home is and how it can help them, so that they can in turn, demand that happens. And, it's not something cool and fun, but something that should just happen.
Yeah, I think Nest said it best. They have a little tag, a little quote somewhere in their website that says that they want to become the new normal. So they want to become that thing that everybody just finds like, oh, why didn't we have this like before? Why, I know. And so now that, so that's that. I want to start that my point with that little quote. But I also want to. Whenever I think about the sexiness factor of products, I keep reminding myself, or when I ask myself why, I remind myself, it's like, well, because we live in a capitalistic society and we need to sell these things, right? And if you do not make them appealing, I mean, why are you going to buy like a $80, $90 light bulb when you can buy a like the new CFL? Well, but even further back, like the CFL,
yeah.
they're energy efficient. They're like really cheap now. They just came out like 5 years ago. Why not get those? Why? And then like LEDs are a little more expensive. Why should I get that even more expensive light bulb when So what's the value there? So by making it sexy, you kind of make this appeal, kind of like the Tesla. Why do I want an electric car? So you have to attach this like additional value proposition because people don't understand yet why this is helping. And the price point is really high, so you have to make it somehow appealing.
Yeah, nobody's driving a Nissan Leaf. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And we can't get rid of sexy. It has to be sexy. I spend most of my time making these things sexy because a lot of the stuff like sticks onto windows or sticks onto your door. And I don't want that. I don't want you to have to deal with that. So I spend a lot of my time integrating it, literally integrating it into your thing. So I work with a window manufacturer to actually get the electronics into the sill of the thing, or the door manufacturer to mortise it into the system so it's just there, you don't know it's there, and it's not this weird thing sticky. So sexy is actually super important. We don't want to get rid of that.
No, I mean, my point was not about the sexiness factor of the individual product, because that's obvious. That will continue. Aesthetic won't change. But the idea that there's a great Tumblr that everybody in this room should look at called "We Put a Chip in It."
Okay.
And it's exactly that. It's, I mean, there are a lot of things that I was like, hey, that was a great idea. Then you actually see it, proposed and conceived of, and you're like, yeah, not so much. But my point is more toward the internet of the thing, and kind of what you brought up in the question is like, what's 10 years from now? And how do we get to the point where you don't go shopping for a light bulb because you think you need a connected light bulb and therefore you want to buy into someone's system? And you go shopping for a light bulb that when you take home, plugs in and works, integrates out of the box with your Nest without having to do anything. You replace a light bulb, it doesn't matter whether you bought a GE or a Philips or an LG or whatever who's making the light bulb. How do you get past we have the best light bulb, we have the best ecosystem thing, and how do you get into the not sexy part where I bring my light bulb home and it works?
I mean, I honestly think it's just a matter of time. We're starting to see education, in this space happen by folks that, they did just buy a new home, and, my dad wants to connect everything. So now he's doing that research. The man, they're 60 some odd years old. So, for them to take this undertaking, it's cool. But he's doing that research. So, and he's not a technologist by any means. He's a civil engineer. So having, so by him knowing that these things exist, you're going to see that penetration of this knowledge kind of extend. As it extends, you're going to see more people create these products. And whether they're small companies that then get eaten up by larger companies, I mean, systematically, I assume that it will look like something that happened with, the PC market. In the 80s, you had 50,000 PC companies in Manhattan alone that put these together from parts. But then came Dell, then came Compaq, Gateway, Lenovo, et cetera, and we're left with just a few manufacturers. And you don't think about really, it's like, oh, do I want to get this or this or this? You're kind of like, yeah, whatever, I go to Best Buy and I'll take a new one because mine just broke. And it's $300, so who cares? But all of this takes time, and same with database technologies. I very much still think we are in its infancy. And there's just nothing we can do. These things just take time.
We have to wait for a unified protocol. I think that's what moved everybody forward, right?
Yeah.
Nobody really liked electricity when they were having the AC/DC debate.
Yeah.
And then AC won, and then electricity became prevalent. And we can cite that by so many other things. So we gotta stop having all this difference and kind of unify the system.
Yeah, and the electricity analogy speaks exactly to maybe the technologies ahead of its time. AC solved a lot of problems back in when AC was necessary. when motors needed to run. But now look at the whole world runs on DC.
I know.
I mean, our devices are all DC. I mean, that was a technology that was way ahead of its time.
Exactly, it was.
And so same thing with, just this whole Internet of Things is very early. I remember hearing the term like for the first time in 2006, and I hit it. I was like, what is the Internet of Things? That sounds like so like not sexy. And
now we have meetups about it.
And now everybody's yeah. And now it actually makes sense because now it's possible, and it's a very young industry. It's a super young industry, so it can only get better from here, I think.
I mean, it needs its HTTP protocol. It needs one way for everything to communicate.
Yeah, good question. So we touched on a little bit about like 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, but can you give like a little bit of like a user story? I'm walking into my house, it's 15 years from now. I mean, how would I basically walk through that? And before you answer that, and you talked about your grid, the off-the-grid kind of homes. I want to hear about how that will play into it 15 years from now too. So, Oscar, if you can answer that one first.
Yeah, I mean, 15 years is a long time.
Think out of the box, man. It's so whole team.
I mean, just the way the technology is advancing, and I'm finding out like things that 2 years ago I wouldn't have thought possible. I mean, we have micro drones now. They're like, you can fit like 10 of them in the palm of your hands, put them up in the air, and they'll start flying around, and you can control them with your cell phone. I mean, it's getting to a point where, I mean, it's the way I see technology is it's going to become symbiotic to our way of life. The same way we now need clothes, and we can choose like what type of shoes we want, and when we go home, we have the ability to choose what programming we want to watch, as opposed to just looking at the TV and being just not having the ability to choose what we want to consume. So I would say the future is definitely a place where we finally embrace technology. Is going to become part of us. Like we're already there. Our cell phones, like if we use them, we freak out. We have anxiety. Our whole lives sort of stops if you don't have a cell phone. But it's going to become more exaggerated. It's going to become, maybe the whole cell phone is going to go away, and then you have some other type of device. I'm not sure, like a watch perhaps, or maybe not even, or something that's wearable that as we go throughout life, things are just going to react to us, and they're going to know who we are, they're going to know what we like. If I want to buy something, everything that relates to me is going to appear in front of me, as opposed to like browsing around. So like if I'm a medium 32, 30 jeans, when I get into the store, everything that's medium 32 like is already there. I don't have to like choose for it. Like if I want to go browse, it's right there. And clothing is something that's never gonna become not tactile. So if I go into a store, I am gonna go to the store because I want to feel it and see it. But it's not gonna be like this endless search into the abyss for like a T-shirt.
You're dating yourself because my ex-girlfriend is a millennial, and all she does, she doesn't go to stores. She doesn't even acknowledge the fact that clothing stores exist. She just buys everything on the line.
Yeah. Same thing, but when she goes shopping, she still needs to choose her clothing size. She still needs to choose the colors that she likes, as opposed to like, hey, this is like, like this new fashion company with the wardrobe just for you.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
In your size.
But the whole store thing, forget about it.
So how's your off-the-grid house going to work 15 years from now?
I don't think it's going to be about the off-the-grid house. I think it's going to be about the off-the-grid city, and I think it's going to be about connecting it at a much larger level. And I think we can get past, if we talk about like, ideal world, I think it's going to be about cities talking to each other and buildings talking to each other and being able to
It sounds like it's on the grid though, as opposed to off the grid. Like I want to build a house up in the middle of nowhere. I want to be completely self-sustaining. I don't want to talk to anybody.
which is fine, but yes, I guess you can, I would consider that like selfish data. But yeah, you can give me, you want to let your neighbors know how much energy you're producing. No, you can keep that data to yourself. No, I mean, off the grid, I think it's going to become a little bit more commonplace. There's a lot of really great tech coming into that space. Things like cogeneration plants that are the size of refrigerators now that can fit in your basement, beyond just solar. But you know, in order, I think for solar to work, we have to, like, especially at the city level, look at the idea of at the city level, right? Because there's been all these fantastic studies that there's enough roof space in all of New York City to actually power all of New York City, but not individually. It's about, you know, being able to actually tie everything together, and so that it really would, its whole premise would have to work on the integrated city, and you being able to share your electricity that you over-generated back into the grid, into your neighbor's grid, and, you know, have all of that work. So, like, you know, we can definitely pull the whole city off the grid if we have all of these connectivity things in place, being able to have them all work together. If everybody stays a silo, we'll never make it there.
That's kind of a paradox.
Did either of you start out as traditional developers? If not, then, you know, what can you say to people who are web and Java basic stuff who are trying to move into the field?
Well, for me, it's an easy one because I started out as an architect, never coding a thing in my life. And I became a, you know, coding and developer by way of being extremely frustrated by the fact that, you know, what I'm doing and the things I wanted to do didn't actually make it there. So I definitely understand what it comes, you know, never had like a formal day of code training in my life, but you know, so I definitely came from a much different background, and so, you know, I had to sort of adopt, and that's why, like, you know, I'm very much for better APIs and SDKs, because for me, you know, if I can consume it better and, you know, use that platform better, then I can, you know, I can create the things I need to create from it, you know, and then I look to the hardcore developers to be able to provide me with those tools that I need to be able to do the things I need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I coded in Fortran back when I was a civil engineer. So I started off in civil engineering, went to fine arts, bounced back to technology, learned more about energy now, in business and things like that. But I think for some reason your statement about the solar grid just kind of captured my thought and like threw me out. And I think, anyway, that whole the energy storage part, Tesla's actually really big into it right now. I think that's going to be a major, the one thing that's going to impact us the most as people, energy storage and energy recharging. So right now, if I plug this thing in, it takes forever to charge. But if we have like a supercapacitor that works like with the same capacity for energy as a battery, you can just touch it to something and it charges automatically. And then things like solar would actually become real. Like it can charge, you know, like these supercapacitor silos somewhere in, you know, the desert, and then bring them here and not have much energy loss. And the reason why that will be possible is because the life cycles are greater. Instead of having 1,000 life cycles that to charge and decharge before the battery dies, these supercapacitors can have like millions. And so you can have generational like storage for energy, and that's, I think that is a major, but I'm sorry, I totally got off the topic right there.
That actually was a good answer. So both answers were good.
Not in 20th century, it's still barbaric.
Yeah, I was thinking about Snow Crash. Actually, they said U.S. would become good at three things: pizza delivery, being software developers, and singing. You know, artists who are singers. And so that's what U.S. would be strong. But yeah, I'm thinking if, from an entrepreneur standpoint, if I had a company that did, you put in a device in your house, and the device had an ID, obviously. You selected the ID, you selected the protocol, because I don't think we'll get to a unified protocol, because there's so many devices, right? Your watch is different than a Windows Sill device. Very different devices, you know.
But they all use HTTP.
Okay, well, obviously, HTTP to communicate. but the protocol of the data is very different, right? So you select those two things, and you have a cloud platform where you could see all your data. You know, this device, the data associated with it. Would that be a good solution as a start? Or does that exist?
There's a lot of good solutions to start.
I mean, smart home kind of is trying to do that, right? So, I mean, I think their whole premise was, right, we had all of these different transmission protocols, everything from Bluetooth to Z-Wave, ZigBee, whatever, all these different. Why not just make an antenna that can read them all and try and integrate it back into a database?
Okay.
And so I think that's the kind of thing where we can get to this unified thing. You might not have, you know, all the devices on that network aren't using the same protocols, but there is a hub in there that's being able to consume all of those protocols and then push it back, you know. And so we just need more of those kinds of things. The protocols definitely have to get better and more robust.
And I think that's the I mean, that's great because HTTP, you know, the HTML, for example, the reason why standardizing something is so hard is because somebody else has to come and make it better, right? And that just keeps, like if HTML for some reason was made better back in like 1995, and like let's say we made HTML5 back then, or came up with something else like not HTML but I don't know,
Betamax. Definitely better than VHS.
So then that's what fractures everything, and that's what's happening right now. That like somebody figures out a better solution to something. Like you can see that in JavaScript a lot, or like in Perl. That's why we have so many different languages. Everything addresses like a different problem. Yet by addressing that problem, then you are separating and fragmenting the whole thing overall. So now you have like all these different languages that do different things, but I mean, and they have a purpose, but nobody's ever going to learn all of them, you know? And so that's the problem with protocols, that somebody comes up with a protocol that solves a problem, but then all these other problems are remaining. So yeah, it's a very complex thing, but I do agree that that whole repository of choosing like your menus, like this is your device, this is your protocol. I've seen that in a couple of companies are trying to do that, but it's definitely not something that an end consumer will ever do. So we need to figure out a better way to do. But it is a good start.
So this guy, and then you, and then you, and then we're gonna have to call it quits because it's getting late.
There's like this old world of supply chain management where there's like RFIDs sitting on everything, and there's been this talk about once they get cheap enough, they're going to be on everything that's being sold everywhere. How do you see that clashing with sort of the whole new wave of Internet of Things? Or do you think they sort of will coexist well?
I think they're going to be really good, you know, coexisting technologies. It's kind of like the barcode, you know, like the barcode exists even as the you know, QR code and all these other codes come out, and even like digital chips. I think once you have a base technology that works and is widely adopted, it's going to remain there for a while, and it might get improved here and there. But as long as everybody adopts it and everybody just takes it and sees that it's good, I think it's going to, yeah.
I mean, RFID chips are a great example of a completely globally adopted protocol, right? And then that's what made them become ubiquitous. And then the fact that, you know, they're making them a little bit better, more robust, but still compatible. If we can do the same thing, you know, to the smart home industry, then I think.
And that's something you're actually starting to see some interesting developments on, is that recently semiconductor manufacturers, chip manufacturers, are embedding the actual tag part of the RFID system in the chip. The antenna part is separate. There's kind of two parts to RFID, but the tag part, the ID part, can become the same ID part, which is what broadcasts over HTTP or whatever protocol that you ever want to use. So I think that the RFID style of thing is actually going to save, in a lot of ways, the Internet of Things in one aspect of the idea how do I pair this, with the, I don't know if you guys saw the old school way where you would pair a device by holding up your phone screen to it, and it would blink the screen and it would blink the code to connect your Wi-Fi through basically like Morse code in an old school way, but that was the one way you used to pair your devices to the internet. But things like RFID, where you bring home your light bulb and you swipe it by the switch before you install it, and the switch scans it, and then you screw it into the socket and you walk away. It's done.
I was thinking more along the life cycle thing as well, because they're going to be for one use when the RFID is sitting in the supply chain of the grocer or whoever it is, or hardware store or whatever it is selling it or distributing it. What about when it gets into the home? Like, is that something that's actually going to transfer? And you're talking about the life cycle of these things earlier.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be huge when that happens, when the RFIDs are to that capability. Like, so if I want to find my socks or something, and I just scan, oh, there they are. And like, or if I'm all of a sudden just like a can collector and I want to collect cans and I just want to see where they are. No, I'm not kidding. Like, that would be amazing if you can just grab a device to like, sort of like find them and find things that are of value to other people, and that goes into the whole reuse, recycle, repurpose things. And I think that's huge. If we have these like devices, this technology that allows for recognition of a specific product, and then see where you get into danger is like how much information these things can acquire, and then kind of like our computers. You throw away a computer, and then somebody like has full access to your life, because they can, repurpose the hard drive and figure out what bank accounts you had and all the other things.
I mean, it's going to be great, I think, also for lifestyle. I mean, I'm sure there'll be use cases for in the house, but I think it's post consumer that where I think it'd be great, but also kind of tricky, right? You already get tickets if you live in New York City for not putting your plastic and your aluminum where it goes. But if they're able to drive by and see that you actually have something metal and plastic, and in the wrong bins, and then all of a sudden you're gonna get lots of tickets. So I think it'd be really great for those kinds of tracking. It'd be like, all right, you go to the landfill and be like, oh, I know who owns that device, and let's go give him a fine for it shouldn't have been in the landfill. So maybe we'll do a lot better at those kinds of. We'll be like, oh, I can't throw this out because I actually have to properly dispose of it because somebody will be able to track me on it.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
So in the ocean.
In the ocean, but I'm sure they'll,
concrete.
Yeah.
they'll just put it on ships. Be like, I'll just get it.
No, I mean like physically going and like throwing your device into the ocean so they can't ticket you.
You have to bury it in concrete.
Yeah, but then all the shipping lanes, like as soon as the ship goes by, it'll read.
Yeah, and then you're probably getting ticketed anyway. Big Brother is watching now.
No, exactly. We'll have drones by then and take care of that.
Really bleak future, man. Actually, I was raising my hand, so. All right.
How do you feel about if the cloud companies like Amazon, Salesforce, what if they take it upon themselves to do the city level planning? Like, we'll have more silos. It's probably not a good thing.
Well, I look for those guys. Those are the only guys with the kind of clout to get it going. Like Google is one of the, they are trying to get the smart city happening. I mean, they're trying it in many. They developed the home energy monitoring that's going on your instead of your old school meter and stuff like that. And they're doing it in cities, and they're collecting the data, and they're being able to do it. So, I mean, we need those kinds of large scale, large reach companies to be able to sort of springboard it out, I think.
Raytheon is a good example in New York City. They operate the New York City's wireless mesh network that no one knows anything about, that you can't use because it's a licensed frequency that doesn't exist. It's not visible to any of your devices. It's the biggest wireless network in the country.
Yeah, and I think when
You're talking about the breadcrumb network, the
have-
next breadcrumb, yeah.
It's called NYC Win,
yeah.
and it operates in this crazy spectrum that is not available to the public.
Right. Yeah, I mean, whenever like a private company takes on like an initiative, I believe that there's like a certain amount of open source that you have to leave to a project, kind of like GNU or Linux, or something like Android, where not only is a company investing development time, but also allows the community to contribute. Because right now we have a lot of cognitive surplus, we call it, where there's a lot of smart people that have a lot of time to do things, but they don't have a way to contribute. And if you give them that ability to contribute, then they make this thing bigger than it initially was meant to be. Something like, for example, HomeKit by Apple. That's kind of like their reinterpretation of the Internet of Things, but like in a sort of Apple App Store sort of way. And I feel like that's so close in that it's bound to fail unless they figure out like a great way to just incentivize companies and developers to use their system. But otherwise, it's just gonna be too limiting. And that's why although I would love to see an Apple succeed because it makes sense and it's great in theory, it's not going to have the support that it needs to actually be implemented into every use case. Same thing with clouds.
With Apple, it doesn't matter if it's better; they'll convince you of it, and they'll convince everybody else.
True.
It doesn't have to be better.
Just shiny and sexy.
But only for a year or two.
Yeah, because then you have to
Yeah, because then it has to be shiny and sexy.
again.
So the S model comes out.
Yeah.
Business model.
Yeah. With like 1 extra megapixel of camera or whatever. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. It's been a pleasure having you. Any additional questions, things you come up with, afterwards, feel free to post them, on the Meetup group. And yeah, this has been videotaped. Does he still say that? I'm aging myself. How do you're like the youngest person here. How do you say it?
Video.